With terrible reviews and even worse box office numbers, Amsterdam can officially be called a failure. Now you might be wondering why we at Filmstack are happy about this, as usually the more great films there are, the better. Well, this is an odd case, as this film was made by one of the most abusive directors still working in the industry today, David O. Russell. Russell had a hot streak with The Fighter, Silver Linings Playbook, and American Hustle, but he had an even hotter streak with his controversial film productions dating back to 1998. Headbutting actors, headlocking directors, and bringing actresses to tears. Yet, somehow he slipped past the Me Too movement, as his forms of abuse weren't too sexual, still finding work due to creating critically acclaimed and profitable films. But now, with 2 consecutive flops, it's safe to assume that it's finally over for David O. Russell. And what better tribute to his career than a chronological deep dive on all of the abuse he's dished out? You will be shocked trying to wrap your head around how actors and even Taylor Swift still wanted to work with him for Amsterdam. So let's go back in time to the first reported incidences. It's 1998 and David O. Russell has already released 2 films by now, Spanking the Monkey and Flirting with Disaster. Both did well critically and at the box office, solidifying him as a capable director in Hollywood. Burt Reynolds could have had a role in Flirting with Disaster, but David heard he was abusive on the set of The Larry Sanders Show and chose not to work with him. Funny how the tables will soon turn.
How the turntables.
David was now working on his 3rd feature film, Three Kings, starring George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, and Ice Cube. The production started sour way back in the screenwriting process, where Russell picked up John Ridley's screenplay based on its synopsis and claimed to have never read it as to not pollute his own idea. John's name was left off the final script until Warner Bros. Stepped in to give him a story by credit. The film had quite an infamous production, with George Clooney being very open about his conflicts with the director in interviews. Russell uses a lot of improvisation when directing, using ideas whenever they'd come to him, which often resulted in the crew working longer hours. This improvisation also led to Russell having frequent outbursts of frustration, so much so that George Clooney ended up having a second job during production, defending the cast and crew from Russell. There was one incident where an extra had a seizure. Clooney immediately went to help him and was shocked to find that Russell didn't seem to care at all. Another incident had Russell furious with a Humvee driver for driving too slow, which had Clooney intervene. These arguments between the two piled up until climaxing with an explosive encounter while filming the final scenes. David O. Russell was trying to teach an extra how to push Ice Cube down by physically pushing the extra himself, but he shoved him down hard, being quoted as going nuts and berserk on the extra. Yet again, Clooney came in to defend the extra, where soon a shouting match occurred. This quickly turned into a physical fight where Russell headbutted Clooney and Clooney grabbed Russell's throat soon after. Paul Bernard, the second assistant director, was so sick of all these issues that he walked off the set and quit. They eventually apologized to each other so they can finish filming, but George Clooney noted that this incident was the worst experience of his life. When asked whether he'd work with David Russell again, he simply answered, "Life is too short." In a 2003 Vanity Fair interview, Clooney would further discuss the incident, saying, "I would not stand for him humiliating and yelling and screaming at crew members who weren't allowed to defend themselves. My job was then to humiliate the people who were doing the humiliating." In a 2004 The Guardian interview, David O. Russell denied ever physically attacking George Clooney and would call him a liar if he ever ran into him. Well, they did run into each other in 2012 at a party, but the encounter didn't go as you'd expect. They ended up mending their relationship, looking back at the great film they made together and stating the mutual appreciation they have for each other. Three Kings released to raving reviews and great box office numbers. With the controversy from the Three Kings production being pretty public, David O. Russell's difficulty to work alongside with started to spread through the Hollywood grapevine. This led to a lengthier time until his follow-up movie, I Heart Huckabees, a film with even more David O. Russell shenanigans than his prior. The film was turned down by every major studio until it got picked up by Fox Searchlight, a smaller studio run by Scott Rudin at the time, who has recently been outed as an abusive monster. A fitting partnership and a nice stepping stone for Russell, who'd eventually work with Harvey Weinstein. I Heart Huckabees controversy started off with a bang. During the pre-production in 2003, it was reported that Jude Law dropped out of the film to take part in Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. Conveniently enough, Russell would cross paths with Nolan at a Hollywood party where he'd grab Nolan in a headlock and demand that he give him Jude Law back. Russell's reasoning for giving him back was to show artistic solidarity to help him save his movie. Many guests at the party were watching, and the news spread quickly. The next day, Jude Law would call up David O. Russell about his role in I Heart Huckabees, squashing any possibilities of him joining The Prestige. much. During filming, Jude Law and others would have issues with Russell's style of directing. He'd be talking and screaming over actors while they were doing their scenes to get them out of their heads. Although it makes sense, this form of directing gave some of the cast members minor breakdowns. Julia Stiles also brought this up after filming Silver Linings Playbook with him, where she said, "I had no time to censor myself or be really self-conscious because he's barking at you and you have to obey or listen." He cranked his barking up to 11 while filming I Heart Huckabees during the infamous Lily Tomlin incident. The whole outburst was recorded, originally circulating through talent agencies in 2003 until being leaked on YouTube in 2007. We'll leave a link in the description, but just know it's very vulgar, so if you're sensitive to these kinds of things, it might be best that you don't watch it. The incident started with Lily Tomlin's frustration over the constant barrage of changes David wanted out of her.
Constant barrage of change this, do this. No.
Very quickly, it turned into a one-way screaming match filled with profanity and sexist terms.
I worked on this thing for 3 years, not to have some yell at me.
Lily originally tried to de-escalate the situation by claiming that she's not as brilliant as him. David then swiped everything off her desk in the scene before cussing his way out of the room, but not long after reappearing and calling her a baby while continuing his tantrum. He locked himself up in his room and refused to leave until Lily went to him and apologized, making all of us question who the real baby was. Lily revealed in an interview that they had another outburst a few hours after resolving the first one. In a 2011 interview, Lily mentioned that she and David are fine now and that things like that happen. Because of the amount of publicity this confrontation got, some of the other incidences on set fell under the radar. Apparently, Russell had touched some of the cast members in private places, like Mark Wahlberg's genitals. And then there are reports he whispered lewd comments into actresses' ears before takes. The film was released in 2004 to mediocre reviews and bad box office numbers, making it clear that all the controversy was not worth it. Again on the down low, hiding until the heat on him dies down, David O. Russell would need a few more years before working on his next film. In 2008, he was named to be the director of Nailed, a movie about a waitress who gets shot in the head by a nail gun and as a result has hypersexual behavior from the brain damage, loosely inspired by whoever approved this movie. Within the first month of filming, James Caan dropped out of the film due to creative differences after arguing with Russell that you can't cough and choke to death at the same time. It was a heated dispute ending with Caan storming off the set. Paul Reubens also had issues with Russell while filming Nailed, where Russell screamed at the top of his lungs at Reubens on his first day there. Production on the film was shut down 14 times, surprisingly not because of Russell but with non-payments to the cast and crew, eventually shelving the film until its release in 2015 under the new name Accidental Love. And yes, it was terrible. Fast forward a bit to December of 2011, Russell's 19-year-old transgender niece filed a police report against him for SA. She claimed that he was helping her with ab exercises until he slipped both hands under her shirt on her breasts after inquiring about the hormones she took for increasing her breast size. Without any witnesses, the case was closed without charges. Russell actually admitted to the incident happening, but claimed that his niece was acting very provocative towards him and invited him to feel her breasts. This incident was even mentioned in an email leaked during the Sony picture hack in 2014 between Sony execs. The email chain blasted David's abusive attitude, even bringing up an incident where he brought Sally Field to a party and reduced her to tears. This is one incident that we'd never have known about if it wasn't for the hack on Sony, and this makes us certain that there's a lot more incidences that haven't been reported. We've skipped over 2010, during which The Fighter released with glowing reviews and box office numbers, as there were no reported controversies around it. It's worth noting David O. Russell was the third choice for directing the film. In 2012, Russell directed Silver Linings Playbook that killed it with the critics and at the box office, and maybe more importantly, also had no controversy surrounding it. Russell was starting to look like a changed man, especially because Anne Hathaway was cast as the lead but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts with The Dark Knight Rises. Luckily this time, he didn't put Christopher Nolan in a headlock. He went on to direct American Hustle in 2013, which was critically acclaimed and another box office hit. He was on a phenomenal streak and it seemed like his abusive past was long gone, or so you would think. In November 2014, Sony Pictures got hacked, leaking lots of confidential data. We've already mentioned one of the leaked emails involving Russell, but there was another set of emails revealing some of the abuse that happened during the filming of American Hustle. Journalist Jonathan Alter emailed the Sony Entertainment CEO, Michael Linton, that the stories about David O. Russell reforming himself was BS, and that the news stories of his abuse and lunatic behavior are extreme even by Hollywood standards. He was cursing out people repeatedly in front of others and even grabbed one guy by the collar. But Amy Adams had it the worst, where she was so verbally abused that Christian Bale had to get in Russell's face face the defender. With this behind the scenes info leaking, Amy Adams talked publicly about it in a 2016 British GQ interview. She said the whole experience was a lot and it devastated her. She said that Russell frequently made her cry on set and how Jennifer Lawrence also received similar abuse, but that she puts up with it better and didn't take it to heart. And it comes as no shock. Amy Adams doesn't want to work with him ever again. In 2015, David O. Russell teamed up with Jennifer Lawrence for Joy, which released to good enough box office numbers but mediocre reviews. The only controversy around the film that we could dig up was that a major Fox executive was reported leaving in tears after trying to defend a line producer Russell wanted to fire, which created a heated argument between the two. There were also reports of a screaming match between him and J-Law, but others have claimed that this was to get a reaction out of J-Law, who was about to film a scene where she'd be screaming at someone. Russell wouldn't direct another feature film until 2022's Amsterdam, but in 2017, an Amazon show he directed was scrapped due to allegations that went public around its producer, Harvey Weinstein. The show reportedly cost $160 million and starred Julianne Moore and Robert De Niro. There's not much controversy around Amsterdam yet, but we're sure something will come up in the following years. One thing that did create a lot of noise was when the star-studded cast was announced in 2021. Showing all the actors who are still somehow willing to work with Russell, even with all of his abusive behavior being publicly known. The most frustrating part of all of this was during the lead up to the film, where David O. Russell was getting rebranded as some chaotic, creative genius. Every interview leading up to the film has praised the director non-stop, even praising qualities that people despised before, such as his on-the-fly improv directing that would lead to longer work hours. Margot Robbie said, "You don't know what you're going to shoot that day," which is terrifying and also exhilarating, and how they worked so late that police had to shut down the filming. She somehow spun all of this into a positive, and a YouTube comment says it best. She deserves an Oscar for pretending so well that David O. Russell is somehow a pleasant person to work with. We hope this video helped you understand why we're happy about the possibility of David O. Russell's career ending. Only time will tell. But as we've seen with this video, only time will also tell how many other abuse stories come out from his past film productions. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. A lot more videos on the way, and until next time, have a good one.